in middle school that when you multiplied like number 1, they called it the butterfly method, okay? And that meant that you take each way and you multiply and then you set it equal. It's cross multiplying, okay? But I guess it looks like a butterfly when you do it. So you do x times 35 and you get 35x. And then you do 5 times 11, so you get 55. And then how do you solve it? Divide by 35. So yes, it looks like we will get some decimals here.
I told you.
1 point what?
6.
Okay. Do number 2. 5 times x. I always start with the one that has the x first. And then you do the 15 times 6.25. 15 times 2.5. I don't know what I was saying. And then what do you do to solve it? Divide by 5, so you get 7.5. Any questions? Okay, so let's look at number 3. What's different about number 3?
There's x plus 1.
Okay, so when we multiply, you still start off with the part that has the
You gotta
x,
multiply the 1 by the
but you
5.
multiply the 5 by the x and the 5 by the 1. Okay, so you get 5x plus 5, and then you multiply the 4 and the 3. And then we're going to get x by itself, so you're going to subtract 5, and then divide by 5. Questions? Okay. Number 4. Number 4 is really similar to the others. When you multiply here, when you multiply by 40, you don't have to multiply two things because it's already together. So you start off by 2x times 40. So 80x. And then you do 16 times 5. Which is 80.
It's 75.
No, it's 80.
Oh, never mind.
And then divide by 80. Okay. Alright, number 5 and number 6 are just a tad bit different because it has x on top and the bottom. Okay. So when you do this one, it doesn't matter which order you do it in. But if I start with that one, I'm going to multiply 14 by both things. So I would have 14x plus 14 times 2 is 28. Then I'm going to do 6 times that. 6 times both parts. It's 24x minus 6. Okay. Now, because I have x's on both sides, I've got to get all of my x's on the same side and all the numbers on the other side. Okay. I would probably subtract 14 and then add 6. So if I subtract 14 on both sides, I get a 10x over here. And if I add 6 over there, 34. And then you're going to divide. Alright, so I'll do it real quick, but it looks like most of you got it right. So you are going to multiply there, so that's 15x plus 15. Multiply there, so that's 12x plus 60. If I move the 12x over and subtract it, that would be a 3x. If I subtract 15, you get 45. Then you divide by 3, so you get 15. So on these problems, you're going to come up with proportions that help the problem make sense so that you can find whatever you're looking for. So it's going to look like, the equation you're going to start with is going to look like those first questions. You just have to decide how to set them up. Okay? And there's several ways to set it up. I'm going to show you one way, but there might be another way or two that still work. Okay? So let's look at number 7. So what you have to start with, it tells you in the problem that these are similar figures, which means they're dilations of each other, pretty much. Okay? And we're looking for either x or whatever the question mark is. Okay? So on this problem right here, what you have to start with is try to decide which sides correspond to each other. Okay? So there's 2 triangles on this problem. Which side corresponds on the other triangle to that question mark? So you're thinking about like taking this triangle and not necessarily flipping it over, but you're trying to make it like look like that triangle. You see how this side's flat? What side on this triangle is going to be flat? EC, that one. Okay? Now look over here. So GC, that side of that triangle, which side does that correspond to in the other triangle? This side. You see that? Okay, so once you figure out what sides go together, then you're going to make a proportion with those sides. Okay? It doesn't matter whether you start with the big one or the small one, as long as you do the same thing on both sides of the equals. Okay? So I'm going to start with the small one. Okay? And so the small one would be that triangle over here on the top right. Okay? So I'm going to start with the yellow, which is the question mark. I'm going to call that X. And then I'm going to divide it by whatever it corresponds to in the other triangle. So the question mark corresponds to 169. Do you agree? Okay. And then I'm going to set that equal to the other 2 sides that correspond. So since I started with the X on this triangle, I have to start with a side on that triangle again. So which side am I going to start with? The 60. Okay? And then I'm going to divide it by the side it corresponds to in the other triangle, which is 156. Okay, questions about how I set that up? All right, now you just solve it. So you cross multiply, and then you solve for X.
That is a really big number.
And what do y'all get for X?
That's just 30. Wait, hold on.
Oh.
69. It's alright. Got big numbers.
Any questions? A lot of these will be big numbers just because sometimes they are, but they don't have to be. They can be decimals, they can be big numbers, they can be small numbers, it doesn't matter. Okay, let's look at number 8. So first thing again I have to do is figure out what corresponds together. Okay? So I know this straight one is going to correspond to the straight one over here. I know the sideways one is going to correspond to the sideways one right there. Okay, again, it doesn't matter which one you start with as long as you're consistent. Okay? For me, I just always start with wherever X is. It just makes sense to me just to start with that. So that means I'm going to start with 21 plus 2X. What corresponds to 21 plus 2X in the other triangle? 27. Okay. Then look at the other 2 sides. Since I started with the 21 plus 2X, that means I got to go with the next number that I see, which is 63 in that triangle.
21.
And then I divide it by whatever it corresponds to in the other triangle, which is 21. All right, we do get 30, so let's go on to the next question. Okay, number 9. Personally, I think number 9 is kind of tricky because they've turned that triangle around a little bit, and you have to figure out how to match it up. And what I do when I'm matching it up is I think about, okay, which two sides are the longest sides and which two sides are the short sides or whatever. Okay, so here's what I know and what I can tell first of all. I'm pretty sure that this side and this side correspond together. Do you agree with that? Because those two are the shorter sides of both of the triangles. Okay? Look at the other two sides that are left.
S corresponds with 30 and
Wait a minute. Which one of these two sides look like they're the longest?
12.
The 12. Do you agree that that looks longer than that one? Okay, so I'm going to highlight it.
Wait, what's that? I don't like this.
Okay, so which one up there is longer, the 33 or the 36? 36. So I know the 12's got to go with the 36, and I know the question mark goes with the 33. You see how I matched that up?
No.
Okay, so you could have x over 33, x is from the bottom triangle, but you got to have 12 over 36 if that's the way you write it. Because x and 12 are from the same triangle, and then 33 and 36 are from the same triangle. You could have it the other way, like 33 over x, and then 36 over 12. That'll work. There's also other ways that you can do it, but that's the two that I'm going to show you how to do it. Okay? Everybody got an answer? What is it?
11.
Good. All right, number 10. Let's match up the sides. Okay. I'd probably start with the longest side. I can tell for sure that's long, right? So look at the other triangle. Which one's longer?
16.
16. So I know 16 and that side go together. Okay? And then that means that even though it's turned around a little bit and shaped a little bit, 12 and 66 will go together. Okay? That's what makes these a little bit weird, is that sometimes the way they have it turned, you've got to think about the short side and the long side. Okay? Try to set it up, try to solve it, and then I'll come look at it with you.